Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth. Our meeting date is Monday, August 12th, most years anyway, 2024. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the clerk to note our starting time for the minutes is 7 p.m. A warm welcome is extended to councillors, staff, delegations, and observers who will participate in this meeting, regardless of whether being physically in attendance in the council chamber in Listowel or being connected through web technologies. We begin tonight's meeting with the playing of O Canada. Those in chambers, as able, are invited to stand. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous peoples in Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after the meeting as an archived video. To those viewing the meeting via the YouTube channel, a warm welcome to you. Many have joined us this evening in the gallery for this meeting. Council meetings follow procedures rooted in long-standing parliamentary traditions. While those registered as delegates are welcome to speak when recognized by the chair, others who have not pre-registered are not provided with that opportunity. There is a general expectation that during this meeting all will be polite and maintain what we call order, silence during the proceedings so that those who have the right to the floor to speak may be properly heard and shown respect. Unacceptable behaviors, including interruptions, heckling, or verbal comments loud enough to disrupt the proceedings of this council meeting, are not acceptable. To those present in the gallery today by attending a public meeting of the council, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and/or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances when deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and/or unacceptable behavior and/or comments. Thank you. At this time, then, I invite your decorum over the course of the coming meeting. Let us move now to item 5 on our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol at this time, I invite all councillors with a perceived pecuniary interest, including those who have declared in writing already, to verbally advise the chair in public session, and if not already done, to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. I believe ahead we've seen something from Deputy Mayor Kellum. Did you wish to address that?
Yes, through you, Mayor Kasenberg, and good evening, everyone. I'll declare pecuniary interest on item 9.2.2 as Armstrong Paving is one of my clients, then subsequently 17.1, the confirmatory bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other colleagues wishing to make a declaration at this hour? I'm not seeing any, so let me proceed. My role as chair prompts me to manage the flow of proceedings tonight and largely in accord with our agenda. We can have some participating remotely by web conference. Should they wish to speak, they may draw the attention of the clerk to this using the conferencing technology text chat function. If technical difficulties arise for remote participants, I will advise. Let us now focus on the people's business. Part of that focus is achieved when those in the chamber silence and put away their phones. Regarding item 6 of our agenda, I have a resolution for consideration to approve the agenda as follows: that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved as amended to include item 8.2, a delegation from Sean Thompson of the North Perth and District ATV Club regarding agenda item 9.2.1. Item 8.3, a delegation from Christine Hesch regarding agenda item 9.2.1. Item 8.4, a delegation from Heather Brewer regarding agenda item 9.2.1. And item 8.5, a delegation from Cherie Fleischhauer regarding agenda item 9.2.1. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Duncan will serve as mover, Councillor Andreessen as our seconder. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Let's move next to item 7 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. Consent items are placed on our agenda because they're believed to be non-contentious, yet they may warrant council's recognition and or action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, or individual action may do so. There are 10 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, anything to extract here or any corrections to the minutes that you'd like recognized? Councillor Rothwell.
Good evening, Mayor Kaysenberg, members of council and public. I'd like to bring forward item 7.3 for discussion, the AMO OMA critical healthcare challenges, as well as 7.10 correspondence from Doug Grant regarding the off-road vehicle use of the trail system.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to pull something from the consent agenda for discussion or debate? All right, then as per our usual process, Councillor Rothwell, you're up.
Thanks very much, Mayor Kaysenberg. I just draw attention to council pages 18 through 19 of our agenda. There's a joint letter between AMO and OMA, which, as I understand, is going to be discussed at our upcoming conference in Ottawa. And they're asking for us to consider a resolution regarding calling on the Ontario government to make significant changes and address the issues that we have before us. And I'd like to know if council is willing to consider that matter this evening, or perhaps at a later meeting after any members of our council are going to the AMO conference to give us an update. Thank you.
Okay, I think it would be in order if you wish to move that we provide a letter of support for this resolution.
I so move, Mayor Todd, with your suggestion that we request report back after the AMO conference, which I believe is next week, for consideration for staff to bring forward a report for our consideration. Thank you.
Okay, I can advise certainly that at AMO next week, I'm actually serving on a panel that's discussing improvements to primary health care in Ontario. So I'll be sort of in the heart of the action, so to speak. But certainly happy to bring back some report, or if any other colleague is attending AMO and wishes to report on that session, welcome to do so. So Councillor Rothwell has moved. Can I call for a seconder? Councillor Andreessen will second. Thank you. Any discussion or debate further on this? Clerk table with us. All right, let's have that vote. And that is unanimously carried. Councillor Rothwell, item 7.10.
Thanks very much, Mayor Kaysenberg. The second item is 7.10, and that's a letter which was submitted by Doug Grant for consideration for the proposal to use ATVs on the North Perth Trail. So this is page 34 and 5. One issue in particular I think that council should consider is the recommendation for reinstitution of a North Perth Trail Advisory Committee, which I believe may be appropriate, whatever our decision is later. And just know that we're going to have plenty of conversation further, but I just want to make sure that this one suggestion comes forward for consideration for council. Thank you.
Okay, I think we could hold that one until a little bit further in the meeting for our consideration. Thank you. Anyone else have anything to pull before we consider a resolution on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I have a resolution for our consideration as follows. At consent items 7.1 to 7.10 be received for information, and the minutes of the July 15th, 2024 regular council meeting be adopted. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Johnston, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Anstead. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. All right, at this time it's proposed that we move to agenda item number 8. We will now consider delegations from those with interest in council's business or authority. I'll remind delegations that in accordance with this council's procedural bylaw, a total time of 10 minutes per delegation is permitted, and that includes both presentation time and providing an opportunity for councillors to ask questions. Delegation is to present on the topic declared on the submitted request for delegation form, and deviations from the topic are generally not acceptable to the chair or this council. Certainly, the procedure bylaw has given the mayor some discretion to apply time limits or restrictions on delegations. I'm not proposing to do that tonight, except to watch the clock carefully. We have 5 delegations. That's 50 minutes of talking potentially with members of the community who wish to consult with us. So let's keep it to 10 minutes each, and I'm willing certainly to give each delegate a 2-minute warning so that they know when they're coming up on their time. I ask in the interest of not drawing things out unnecessarily that those coming later in the delegate order not repeat the same points unnecessarily, since your council is listening and taking notes on the subject matter. And again, decorum is required. That includes maintaining reasonable silence during a delegate's presentation. I wish to take note that there are actions available to me to try to maintain an air of respect and order should we step outside those reasonable boundaries. Further to my request that we maintain an atmosphere of respect or courtesy, I'll remind those delegating that they should not use the names of those who have not consented to such use. We rely on your judgment on that score. We're going to hear from the registered delegates in the order that they applied for delegation this evening. That means our first delegate this evening is Mr. Wes Lambert of Listowel, Ontario, who wishes to speak to item 9.2.1 on our agenda. Mr. Lambert, welcome. Please come to the podium. And if there's a button on there that looks like a talk button, if you press that will make the magic happen. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Kaysenberg and councillors. I'm Wes Lambert, and this is my wife, Marge. And as property owners on Barnett Street, we wanted to address council about the proposed ATV use of the North Perth Trail between Listowel, Atwood, and Henford. We've been working closely with our neighbors on our little street, and some of those people are in attendance tonight, and I'd just like them to stand up so you could see the faces I've been working with. Thank you. We have several concerns that directly affect the 9 houses that back onto the floodplain where a new ATV trail would be constructed in order to link up with the commercial property on the south end of Listowel on Barnett Street, which would be the Walmart parking lot. We have lived in our house on Barnett Street since it was built in 2005 and have witnessed how the floodplain floods at least 2 to 5 times a year. These are scenes from our living room window that we see a minimum of twice a year. In the spring, the river overflows its banks due to snow melt and heavy rains. Other times of the year, the river overflows due to heavy rains. As the pictures reveal, the flooding is not just due to snow melting in the spring. It's not unusual to see flooding from March to November. Due to changing weather patterns, we can only expect this to increase. The repairs required to maintain the trail behind Barnett Street would be an ongoing issue, as the trail will most likely be completely washed away several times a year. We feel this will be an impossibility for the ATV club to maintain to the required municipal standard, resulting in an expense to the municipality or a non-maintained trail. Fire is a huge issue. Again, due to changing weather patterns, summer temperatures are getting hotter, drier, and are lasting longer, making the vegetation of the floodplain very susceptible to fire. The vegetation here has not been tamed and consists of tall grasses and many species of weeds, wildflowers, and trees. During drought conditions, An ash or cigarette butt or a spark from an ATV is enough to start a wildfire. How would fire equipment and emergency vehicles access this area, and how quickly? All houses on the south side of Barnett Street and on Riverview Drive would be threatened. All 9 houses on Barnett Street that back onto the Maitland River will lose the enjoyment of their backyards due to excessive noise, dust, and interference caused by the ATVs. Every homeowner should be guaranteed the continued peace and tranquility of their backyard. After 19 years in our home, this should not be arbitrarily taken away from us. We currently enjoy watching deer, foxes, raccoons, groundhogs, squirrels, rabbits, skunks, some wildlife more appreciated than others, and many species of birds and waterfowl. The character of the entire ecosystem would be wiped out. The 9 Barnett Street properties would have to be reassessed, as they would no longer have usable backyards and assessments lowered, which would mean less property taxes to the municipality. Some homeowners on Barnett Street have made significant time and financial investments in beautifying their backyards. However, if an ATV trail is directly behind these homes, property values would decrease. We only heard about the request for the use of the trail by the ATV Club from the article in the Banner on May 9th. We began hearing the ATV Club advertising on the local radio station to encourage opening the trail to ATV users, as well as hosting events locally to gain support. We were just 2 people who were very passionate about the trail and quite upset about the possibility of losing the use of our well-loved outdoor space. We knew we did not have the resources to compete with the attention the ATV Club was generating for support. We talked to our neighbors on Barnett Street, and again, very few knew about the survey or the ATV Club's request to share the trail. At this point, we decided to initiate the petition. After starting the petition and talking with people using the trail, our focus began to expand. We soon realized how important the serene and tranquil trail is to the well-being of so many people. It also became obvious how many people had not heard about the survey and therefore had not had an opportunity to express their objections to the ATV use. As the survey was only open for 20 days, we felt it did not reach enough people. We contacted the Listowel Banner to voice our concerns for the future of the trail, to make more people aware of what was happening. After the article appeared in the Banner on June 13th, we were able to connect with many others across all of North Perth who shared our passion for the trail, and we were able to work together towards achieving the same goal. We have 727 signatures on the petition from people that are opposed to the use of ATVs on any part of the trail system. Later this evening, you will see the results of the North Perth survey. The top part of this slide shows the numbers for and against ATVs on the trail as generated by the survey. 57% opposed to 43% in favor. The bottom part of the slide shows the results using the number of petition signatures as those opposed. This changes the percentage results of those for and against substantially. Since the number of signatures on the petition that are opposed to ATV use on the trail is so many more than the survey. We feel it is very important that Council understand that the opposition to ATVs on the trail is much greater than the data collected in the North Perth survey, with almost 70% of the public indicating opposition. We believe that there are probably some people against ATVs using the trail that completed the survey but did not get an opportunity to sign the petition. Therefore, the figure of almost 70% of those opposed would be much higher. I shudder with fear when I think of how a child or a senior may react when an ATV comes barreling down the trail. How long before someone is seriously injured or killed, an innocent trail user or an ATV operator? People cannot safely share a trail with an 800-pound machine. ATVs are able to use most township and county roads. Please keep trail use to its original intended purpose of walking, cycling, running, and horseback riding. Please, I repeat, please, no all-terrain vehicles. Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg and Council, for giving us this opportunity to voice our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Good timing, too. I'm impressed with keeping on time. Very, very well done. Very well done. Thank you. All right, let's turn to our next delegation then. Our next delegate is Mr. Sean Thompson. He is with the North Perth and District ATV Club. Mr. Thompson, I believe, is coming in remotely, according to the clerk, so if you can cue that up for us, that would be appreciated. Mr. Thompson, are you with us?
I believe so.
Oh, there we go. We can hear you.
There we go. I'm sorry, I'm having difficulties with my video, so it's just me voice tonight.
Please proceed.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. As president and behalf of the North Perth and District ATV Club, I would like to thank everyone for their time and hard work on a request for trail use. Council members, municipal staff, OPP, Bylaw, Chris Snell and Jeff Newell, both those gentlemen sure have their hands full. In this current council meeting, the report for our request will be read, and ultimately the decision is up to council to vote on. Regardless of the outcome, our club will still be here doing what we love to do. We will still continue bettering our community, helping those in need on roadside, on our roadside agreements, volunteer for the agricultural fair, as well as safety and education for riders and general public. I should have a photo displayed there. I don't quite, there it is. There, it's coming up. This brings you to the photo displayed. If our request is denied tonight, we'd like to see a few of these signs strategically placed in the areas where ATVs travel more frequently as of right now. Roads like Tremaine and Road 158, people travel there back and forth to get back to Atwood. Also, Benning Street to Road 165, known as Gun Club Road, onto Line 87. This route is frequently used to get to another ATV club trail. These signs create some awareness to drivers and help keep ATV riders safe. This kind of quick also brings me to the current bylaw, which states no person shall operate an ATV during the hours of 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. during the school year. Two of these main roads actually leading out of town, both have schools out of them, which is Tremaine and on Benning Street there, which becomes an issue for some of the recreational purposes going through the week during those hours. If not many at all, but we do have some have these concerns raised by those riders who do sometimes ride through those hours. We were wondering also, does this portion of the bylaw affect the exemptions from hunters, farmers, and snow removal? Just almost done here. There's also has been some issues with riders crossing or traveling a portion of Maine or Wallace to get to gas stations or destinations like home, food, etc. For example, one of my directors was pulled over by the OPP after crossing Wallace Ave, continuing on Inkerman Street east. After speaking with the clerk, they believe there was no part of the bylaw that says we cannot do that. We'd like to see the bylaw written a bit more definitively and more clear for everyone to understand, as well as figure out a possible proximity distance from a school instead of hours or if you guys have any other ideas, we'd be definitely open to working with whatever. Definitely like to thank you for your time. If you guys have any questions, please shoot away.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Yep.
Any councillors have questions for Mr. Thompson at this point? Councillor Rothman?
Thank you very much, Mayor Todd. Perhaps we could request Mr. Thompson to provide written comments. I found it difficult to hear some of the roads and so on that he was suggesting for signage, but I appreciate the comments. Thank you.
Thanks. Hopefully you heard that, Mr. Thompson. Hopefully. All right. Thank you. We'll move to our next delegate. Our next delegate is Christine Hesch of Listowel. Christine, if you'd come forward. You have to press the microphone button.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor and councillors, for listening tonight to my concerns. I'm here representing a group of runners. We are called the Saturday Morning Runners. You may have seen us running around the streets of Listowel. There's been some articles in the Banner about us over the past couple of years and different fundraising efforts that we have supported. We were established originally in about 2013, and we are now over 100 members. We're not just runners, but we're walkers, bikers, cyclists. We're just health enthusiasts, and we're all supporting each other for our passion towards fitness. The trail is an integral part of our running for us. It provides a safe place for both runners and bicyclists, whereas many of our side roads around town no longer provide that for us. Many of us in our group love the social aspect of running. We love meeting up on Saturday mornings, hence our name, and we go for runs together. We often will run 2 or 3 across, which is becoming quite difficult on our busy streets in Listowel. So the trail is one of our last places where we can go and train safely. I have 2 maps up there. You can see the distance to Atwood and return to Listowel is 19 kilometers, and to Hemford and back it's 32. So this provides an excellent training place for us. There's many people in our group training for both marathons, half marathons, ultra runs, and it is our perfect place. Our group, we consistently use the trail to go for group runs. We love going out to Atwood every year for the fireman's breakfast. And we have concerns about when we come and we meet ATVs on the trail, how is there going to be room for us to pass? Right now, when the trail is quite overgrown in midsummer, and there is enough room for a bicyclist and a runner to safely pass each other without slowing down. We worry as runners about having to navigate around stopped vehicles, stopped ATVs, risking poison ivy and ticks as well. Every spring, we patiently wait for the snow, the ice to melt, and we're excited to get back on the trail again. We have a lot of concerns about the ruts that would be created by ATVs, rendering the trail unrunnable for us. With tracks and ruts being left, we worry about sprained ankles and other possible injuries. With an uneven surface that would be left from ATVs, it takes several weeks for this to even out or to be graded again. It would also render the trail unrideable for cyclists as well. The amount of damage created with just one pass of an ATV on a wet trail, whether it be in the spring or after a heavy rainfall, it would require extensive time, effort, money, and for repairs before we could again use it. We need this place. It's our safe place for training. Often when we are on our longer runs, we tend to actually become zoned out. Maybe you've waved at a runner before and they don't even acknowledge you. It's because we are so in our heads. We are thinking about our hydration, our pace, our breath. We don't really have time to think about some other things sometimes. So there's many of us that log over 75 kilometers a week, and we rely heavily on that trail. Out there on the trail, if we're alone, we can listen to podcasts and music. If we had to start sharing it with ATVs as well, that would be something that would become completely unsafe and unsuitable for us well. We really do have little options left to go and run these longer distances around our area. So in conclusion, we ask that the town council rejects all proposals and allowances for ATVs to be on the trail in any capacity. This is our last safe place to both run as a group or independently. Please protect this treasure that we as North Perth built for pedestrian use for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hesh. Colleagues, any questions for Ms. Hesh? Anyone? Okay, thank you. Let's move to the next delegation. Next, I have Heather Brewer, who is a resident of Listowel, who wishes to speak on the same subject matter of 9.2.1 on our agenda tonight. Ms. Brewer, make sure the microphone button is showing red there. Looks like it
Seems to
is,
be. I guess
and
we're
you're
good.
on.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Kiesenberg and all members of council. My name is Heather Brewer, and I've been a resident of North Perth for more than 20 years. During that time, I've been an avid user of the North Perth Trail System for active outdoor recreation activities, independently and with my family, and friends, basically for walking and cycling, getting some exercise. I am before you this evening to address one part of tonight's council report on the proposed ATV use of the North Perth Trail, namely the potential for a 6-month trial, which you may recall was formed as part of the proposal. On May 6, Council directed staff to collect feedback from the community about proposed ATV use of the North Perth Trail through a survey. Council suggested that the survey should also include the level of support for a 6-month trial period with ATVs actually allowed on the trail. However, there was no discussion at that time about the details of how such a trial would actually be conducted, and the purpose of the trail was also very general at that time, basically just to, quote unquote, see how it goes. So I've been wondering, let me just advance here. What specifically would see how it goes? What does that mean to council? And I would like to take this opportunity to go a little bit deeper to that question. To me, with a scientific background, any trial or test needs to have defined criteria that are going to be evaluated. They need to have a baseline of those criteria and then measuring the change in those conditions through the trial, very generally using the scientific method. If this approach was to be applied, what criteria would be used and what impacts would actually be measured as the basis for any conclusions of such a trial? The council report being presented later tonight identifies safety concerns as one of the key issues, both of current trail users and ATV drivers and passengers. There is existing relevant data that I've brought forward here on this slide that can be used to provide insight to this issue rather than risking injuries during a trial in North Perth. The data on this slide shows injuries and deaths in all of Ontario associated with off-road vehicles. Contrary to what some may think, this data indicates that there are just as many injuries and deaths occurring in off-road locations, such as trails and private lots, as on-road locations. The data indicates that designated trails are not necessarily safer for off-road vehicle drivers and passengers than riding on public roads on road locations, since many injuries and deaths do occur in these off-road locations. Here I consider some other potential impacts from ATV use of North Perth Trail and the limitations of a trial to measure these important outcomes. There's been concern expressed about the potential reduction in wildlife. To properly assess this impact, we would require a baseline inventory of all potentially affected birds, mammals, plants, and trees currently on the trail, conducted prior to ATV use. I'm doubtful that we have such an area-specific inventory currently, and this would be a cost and expense even before beginning such a trial. I think the frequency and severity of problematic trail encounters between ATVs and other trail users should be another important part of any potential trial. However, it's clear that significant resources and funding, again, would be required to ensure that any results that are reported during a trial are both impartial and accurate. And to me, one of the most important outcomes from an effective trial would be to show if the number of current trail users for active recreation would decrease if ATV use was allowed. This would require a way to measure the number of people that are currently using the trail prior to allowing any ATV use to define the baseline, and then also during the trial. At this point, I would just like to remind Council about the priorities and vision that were recently established in the Transportation Master Plan, which was a document endorsed and accepted by all members of this Council. The Transportation Master Plan establishes the priority for active transportation activities in North Perth with a vision to promote a walking and cycling network across the community. While I realize that the specific projects of a master plan are subject to subsequent refinement, a master plan is developed to provide overall guidance on the goals of the community. Really, any reduction in the number of active recreation trail users that may occur because of the presence of ATVs would be in direct conflict with the vision that has been established for our community in the Transportation Master Plan. There are just a few additional considerations that I would like to bring to your attention before I conclude. First, it's my understanding that efforts are in progress by the municipality to develop a connection from the North Perth Trail to the G2G Trail in Moncton. I think it is important that any potential external partners that may be involved in establishing that type of connection are not confused by a 6-month trial that would allow ATV use on the trail while ATV use is not permitted on the G2G. Second, we have already heard from another delegation tonight that the opposition to ATV trail use is much greater than the data collected in the North Perth survey. With more than 700 signatures on an independent petition, almost 70% of public input is opposed to ATV use of the trail. And lastly, of course, there is already a workable solution for ATVs to access locations in North Perth through the bylaw passed in 2021, allowing ATVs to use most roads. So in conclusion, I ask that Council support the entire community in the pursuit of active recreation activities on the trail as an accessible and safe location. I have outlined some of the many reasons why there should not be a 6-month trial period. In particular, there would be a need for significant resources and funding to define baseline conditions, implement policies, and monitor and report on outcomes. And perhaps most importantly, if even one person stops using the trail for active recreation because of ATVs, it would be a significant loss for that individual and for our community as a whole. When the petition of more than 700 signatures is considered, we have heard that approximately 70% of public input is opposed to ATV use of the trail. Why would a 6-month trial be conducted when there is a clear majority that is already opposed? I appreciate very much this opportunity to provide this input to Council's decision-making process. Thank you very much for your time. and I'm happy to be taking any questions if time allows.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions for Ms. Brewer? I have one, actually. I'm intrigued by your first bullet point, and there's your second bullet point, in fact, that says that other motorized vehicles. I'm looking for a general sense from you about snowmobiles in the winter months and about electric cycles.
So I could comment on snowmobiles on the trail. My feeling is that the use of the trail by other trail users is less during the period of time when snowmobiles are on the trail. That's just my own personal experience, and therefore that makes snowmobiles different than ATV use. With respect to electric vehicles, I think perhaps that's beyond the scope of our discussion this evening.
Thank you. All right, let's move to our last delegate this evening. We have with us Sherry Fleschauer of Listowel, who wishes to speak again on item 9.2.1 of our agenda.
It's Sherry.
Sherry?
Yeah.
Easy. Sherry.
Hello. I'm not good at this kind of stuff. I'm much better talking to children. So I am here basically for that very reason. I walk on the trail every day. I walked on all of the sections of the trail very regularly, and it's my home away from home. I love being out there. I love meeting the people that are out there and seeing the animals, and it's a happy place for me. But it also allows me to meet a lot of people who use the trail, and I'm sure you probably aren't aware that there are 2 daycare groups that go across the bridge twice a day. And there are several of those children altogether. The other day I walked across and there was 2 moms, and between the 2 of them there were 9 children. And so the space took up from the bridge to Riverview. And those are very common kinds of things that are there. There are kids that are riding bicycles and they'll zip right across the trail and go down into beside the river. The reason I am doing this really is for my friend Shirley, who is in a nursing home, and Shirley is 88. And Shirley walks with her walker every single day, often twice a day, down the trail as far as she can go. She's afraid to go as far as the river. I often will walk with her. It is her happy place. It is important for her. And the moment she heard that there would be ATVs around, she was terrified. She's not the only senior out there that's walking by themselves. And she does it herself, and she is adamant that she is going to do it forever. There are several people in the not the nursing homes, but the retirement homes. There's a man who comes down frequently and uses his walker, and he walked across Canada. And this is where he is now, and he needs that space. He needs to be able to be who he is now. That's why I am here, because those people aren't being heard from. And there are a lot of them out there, and they have to be considered. And as soon as you put motorized vehicles on there, they don't stand a chance, because they're going to go back into their homes, or they might sit on the benches, and they're not going to do what they really truly want to be doing.
and they're not going to have the socialization that they would have otherwise. There are so many people out on the trail to meet that are fascinating. Back in June, a club came from London, probably over 50 bikes. And a lot of there were parents with children riding on their bikes, and they were so respectful. And they rode through town, and then I don't know where they went from there. But it was wonderful, and everybody said hello, and everybody was friendly. And there's no reason why we can't have that all the time. But if there are motorized vehicles, we're not going to have that. The trail is a beautiful spot. You can hear the birds everywhere you go. And I go there for peace. And if we can't let, especially those people that don't have all of the opportunities, get those opportunities, there's something wrong. There's also a young girl who has a specialized bike, and she used to live behind me, and they moved to the trail where the trail was so she could ride her bike without falling off on the curb. And she was thrilled. We have to think about those people because they're every bit as important as we are. And I'm sure a lot of you know some of those people who don't have those chances. The trail is a beautiful place, and everybody should have the right to use it. And that's all I really need to tell you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions for Sherry? I'm not seeing any at this hour. Thank you very much to those who participated this evening, and I know there's a lot of passion in this issue. There's still more to come, but thank you very much for your participation in the respectful manner that you presented yourselves. I think that it's a credit to our community, in fact, that people were balanced and measured in presenting their approaches this evening, their thoughts on this subject, and so I thank you for the decorum very much. All right, let's move to our reports from departments. And first up, we have two items from the Strategic Initiatives Department. In item 9.1.1, Surrey Council is asked to authorize the endorsement by Mayor and Clerk of a contribution agreement with the province of Ontario related to another successful rural economic development or RED grant application. In other words, we're kind of on a roll lately with RED. Our Manager of Strategic Initiatives, Jessica McLean, will provide an overview of this request. Ms. McLean, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Kirstenberg, and good evening, Council. So this past February, staff submitted a grant funding application to a provincial program that is focused on economic development. We received notice in late spring that the application was successful. The successor project does align with the North Perth Strategic Plan, more specifically the goal of growth and economic development. The purpose and the project as proposed is called the North Perth Innovation and Business Center. So the purpose of the funding is to support the development of underutilized municipal space through minor renovations, furniture and equipment purchases and upgrades. In the future, it is proposed that the space will be used to offer services that support business development and innovation. The provincial funding will cover 30% of eligible project costs, up to a maximum of just over $17,000. The project and municipal contribution will be brought forward to Council during the 2025 budget process for consideration. So at this time this evening, we are looking to advise Council that this project funding was received and request approval for the Mayor and the Clerk to sign the provincial contribution agreement. I can answer any questions.
Thanks, Ms. McLean. Colleagues, questions or first comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I have a resolution as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth directs the Mayor and Clerk to sign the RED 610308 contribution agreement. I call for a mover, moved by Deputy Mayor Kellum, seconded by Councillor Richardson. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you, Ms. McLean. Stay there. In item 9.1.2, Ms. McLean brings back to council an update of the draft of the North Perth Attainable Housing Community Improvement Plan, something that was earlier commented on by this council, as most of us will recall recently. The plan document has now been updated following inputs from this council, and we're seeing it again and notions about how it will be implemented at the table tonight. Ms. McLean is going to be supported by an external consultant, but I'll leave it to her to bring the consultant in at the appropriate time. The floor is yours, Ms. McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Kingsburg and Council. So tonight, the Community Improvement Plan project team is presenting the final draft North Perth Attainable Housing Community Improvement Plan for Council's consideration for adoption. Before I invite Stantec Consulting to provide their summary of the project, staff are wanting to highlight a few comments on implementation of the CIP. So following Council's adoption of the CIP, staff will begin the process to implement the plan. It's anticipated that this will be in the form of an implementation policy or procedure, which will come back to Council soon at a later date. This will determine such things as the CIP implementation committee composition, the application format, the annual intake periods, marketing, monitoring, and as well as finalization of the affordable and attainable rental rates that would be considered eligible under the CIP. The 2024 municipal budget allocated $75,000 to support implementation of the CIP incentive programs over the current year. The 2025 budget process will seek council direction on municipal investment for the continuation of the CIP incentive programs. The decision to fund the CIP programs, as well as which programs are offered each year, will be the responsibility of council. Now I would like to introduce Polly Dang and Tyler Rosato, who are joining us virtually and representing Stantec Consulting. Following their presentation, we will be available for questions and comments from council.
Thank you, Jessica. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and all members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to present this final CIP for your consideration and be a part of this adoption meeting of council, which is being held pursuant to Section 28 of the Planning Act to consider this Attainable Housing Community Improvement Plan for the municipality of North Perth. My name is Polly Dang. I'm an urban planner at Stantec Consulting, and I'm here with my colleague Tyler Rizzuto to present this plan. We have a 15-minute presentation for you today, and we'll be open to council and public feedback at the end of this presentation. Looking back at the project schedule, the original scope of work of most of the fall and winter months and occurred in 4 phases. Stantec first completed a background study that was based on our review of all the applicable provincial, county, and policy documents related to land use, development, and affordable attainable housing. Our needs assessment report was drafted during this phase and provided to staff for comments. Phase 2 involved gathering feedback directly from public as well as key stakeholders. We also incorporated municipal feedback into the process at this time, which involved input from both council and staff members. In the third phase, we've drafted the policy direction and incentive programs for a first draft of the CIP, which was refined with input from staff, council feedback, and agency consultation. As a commenting agency for the CIPs, Municipal Affairs and Housing have reviewed this document over a 60-day period and have had no comments requiring revision. Next slide, please. The North Perth Attainable Housing Community Improvement Plan aims to minimize financial barriers to the creation of rental, affordable, and attainable housing within the municipality to encourage the development of a mix of housing along the housing continuum in North Perth. The CIP offers 5 financial incentive programs to eligible applicants. The planning and building permit free grant is provided to cover 50% of the eligible fees for a proposed project or property up to a maximum of $5,000. This may include costs associated with zoning bylaw amendments, minor variances, site plan control, and other development fees. The tax increment equivalency grant is to stimulate investment by deferring part of the increase in property tax for an attainable housing project. This will be provided over 10 to 15 years, with 100% of the tax increment being provided in year one and gradually reducing by 10% each year. The costs may include, but are not limited to, those associated with redevelopment, restoration, expansion, and professional consulting services for the proposed development. The DC rebate program offered by the DC Act will be in the form of a DC waiver with the maximum value of 100% of the applicable development charges based on the number of attainable dwelling units in the proposed development. The additional dwelling unit program provides incentives to add legal secondary suites accessory to the primary unit. The maximum value of this grant shall be 50% of the eligible costs, up to a maximum of $10,000 per property. This amount can go up to $15,000 if the proposed project meets the definition of a sustainable building. Costs include those associated with egress, engineering, accessibility, and interior works, as well as professional consulting services for a proposed unit. Finally, the commercial and rental housing conversion and expansion grants may be provided for up to $20 per square foot of expanded or converted space, up to $10,000. And this value may be a maximum of $20,000 or 50% of eligible costs per property if the proposed project satisfies the CIP requirements, along with design and sustainable building requirements. Next slide, please. The key eligibility criteria for these previously mentioned grants requires the proposed developments to comply with the following. They need to meet the definition of affordable or attainable provided in the CIP or one by an upper level of the government. They need to be located in a primary or secondary CIP area. They need to contribute to 5 or more units for the DIEG program and 3 or more units for the DC rebate program. The maximum combined value of grants cannot exceed $20,000 over a 24-month period, and the total value of grants cannot exceed the total value of eligible costs of the project. Retroactive grants for works prior to the adoption of the CIP are not eligible. There must be no outstanding tax arrears or municipal obligations. The units must be maintained as affordable or attainable for a minimum period of 20 years or the duration of the registered agreement, which may be extended by the municipality or at council's discretion. And finally, the units are not permitted to be used as short-term accommodation. Next slide, please. There have been several items received through feedback from the public meeting and municipal staff in relation to the final CIP document that is in front of you tonight. Firstly, with regards to the projected budget allocated to the CIP, some funds have been allocated in the municipal budget for 2024, and funds for allocation in the budget for 2025 are under review. Next was the alignment of the CIPA with the new official plan draft from June 2024. Stantec has included the additional settlement areas to align with the boundaries presented in the latest draft of the official plan. In addition, we have also added wording that allows amendments to the CIP areas without requiring an amendment to the plan. A concern was previously raised regarding the affordable housing benchmark as being too high for single-income individuals. With regards to this concern, Stantec recommends further discussion with the county as a way forward in defining a lower benchmark that targets deep affordability while ensuring alignment of definitions with higher levels of the government. In addition, for both affordable and attainable housing definitions, the CIP includes wording that maintains flexibility for them to evolve in accordance with upper level updates without necessitating an amendment to the plan. Next slide, please. Next, with regards to the inclusion of additional dwelling units in rural areas, the current CIP, based on feedback received from consultation, aims to focus and encourage attainable housing in areas with existing jobs, amenities, and infrastructure to support a more significant increase in housing. In terms of staff requirements for CIP administration, our approach to the current CIP framework aims to minimize the staff involvement required. However, the decision is up to the municipality staff to utilize annual monitoring of the CIP as a tool to indicate staff needs over time. Overall, in our previous public meeting, Council provided positive support, noting that the grants included in the CIP were the next best steps towards affordable and attainable housing. Next slide, please. In addition to comments received from Council, we received a few queries from staff as well, and one of the main ones here was around the application of CIP programs to ownership housing. Based on our understanding of housing needs and discussions with the municipality, the CIP programs offered recognize and prioritize rental housing to cater to the major gaps in housing continuum needs across North Perth. An increased supply of rental units aims to stabilize rising rental prices, provide greater housing diversity, and enhance housing accessibility overall. Next slide, please. In summary, there have been 6 key changes reflected in the final CIP document that is in front of you tonight as a result of the feedback discussed earlier. For community improvement project areas, wording has been included to clarify that appendices to the CIP may be updated in the future without needing any amendment. The general eligibility criteria confirms that financial incentives will not be applied retroactively to work started or costs incurred prior to the adoption of the CIP. The eligibility criteria for the TIC program requires projects to contribute 5 or more attainable affordable rental dwelling units. And similarly, the eligibility criteria for the DC rebate program was revised to require 3 or more affordable attainable units. Wording has been revised to allow the possible implementation of the DC rebate program for attainable rental units, while the DC waiver policies of Bill 23 are still in place for affordable units. This revision is based on staff feedback regarding the removal of entry-level residential unit discount program from the upcoming DC bylaw. Next slide, please. An amendment to the CIP will not be required to review definitions linked to other policy documents that have been updated during the lifespan of this plan, particularly those of affordable and attainable housing. And finally, the glossary provided at the end of the document notes for attainable housing that most recent median before tax household income figure for North Perth will be used for the purposes of administering the CIP and its programs. Next slide, please. Thank you for your consideration of the work completed on this project. Please let us know if you have any questions.
All right, thank you, team, for bringing forward this update to the CIP for affordable, attainable housing. Comments, questions for either the consulting team or for Ms. McLean? Councillor Rothwell?
Thanks, Todd. And thanks very much for the presentation to our team. The question I have relates to our consideration of budget amounts, and we do speak to this issue, and I know it's coming up in our 2025 budget deliberations, but do we have any idea in terms of expected numbers of applications so that we have any idea how much we should be putting into this budget consideration, just as a ballpark? Thank you.
I'm inviting Ms. McLean to respond to this one. Go ahead.
Thank you for the question for you, Mr. Mayor. We have had a few interested potential applicants come forward that are looking to be able to apply to the CIP. The one is a larger development, and the other is the addition of an ADU, so 2 different scales of projects. And we've been having conversations with the CEO and the treasurer on what that looks like in terms of budget impact. I can't comment exactly what that impact would be. Some of the programs in the CIP, it's more of an impact that year, while others, such as the TEAG, it would be felt a bit later on and over that span of the project.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else with questions? Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Kaysenberg. My question is regarding the exclusion of additional dwelling units from rural areas despite being allowed in the official plan zoning. It says that the exclusion is based on feedback received to focus attainable housing on areas where there are existing jobs and amenities. I guess the clarification I'm wondering is this for grant purposes, I guess? That the additional dwelling units would be excluded from the grant process in rural areas. I just want clarification on that.
I think the intention is to initially, at the start of the CIP program, focus that growth in areas with existing jobs, amenities, and infrastructure. But if that branching out over the course of the CIP is required across rural areas, then that is an amendment that can be made in the future. But we begin with providing these grants and focusing that growth first in areas that already have that infrastructure to support more significant growth.
I'm sorry, I really struggled to understand just the cutting in and out. Maybe Ms. McLean, you can clarify. So, is it true that it's more around the granting versus the ability to have additional units in rural areas?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, it's the way this program would be applied. It's the grants. It doesn't say anything about whether they're allowed or not. Staff had discussed how once we start implementing this, we'll monitor if we're getting requests for ADUs in rural areas that are wanting to utilize this program, if they are attainable and affordable. And over the years, if that becomes significant, then we can reassess and see if we need to update the program parameters.
Thank you. That's helpful for clarification. Additional question? Thank you through you, Mayor Kaisenberg. And one additional question. It's regarding the execution and implementation of the CIP. Where would that fall in terms of departments? Would that be in the building department? Would that be on your department? I'm just curious about how it will be executed.
Yes, thank you for the question. Through the mayor, the CIP Implementation Committee, it will be made up of staff members from various departments. So the Strategic Initiatives Department, the Finance Department, the Building Department, and Planning. In terms of managing the day-to-day and administering, it will fall under the Strategic Initiatives Department. So at an upcoming meeting, Council will be asked to appoint the CIP Administrator, which would be assumed to be the Manager of Strategic Initiatives.
Thank you for sharing that process.
In other words, her. All right. Let me just, I want to follow up on the question. I see that Mr. Garland's in the audience with us. Can you comment on ADUs as of right in rural areas at this point, Mr. Garland, just so that Councillor Andreessen has a reasonable perspective on that?
Thank you, Mayor Kaisenberg and members of North Perth Council. So they are permitted to a degree on the agricultural properties. So typically there are limitations around proximity to existing buildings, limiting severance opportunities in the future. So they really are meant to be connected to the agricultural or farming operation. The proposed official plan I just shared with you up now does somewhat reflect that. So it does continue to encourage those ADUs or those such additional dwelling units to continue on those agricultural properties in the future. So there's some opportunities that would exist.
Thanks. You were reading my mind as you were looking it up, my friend. All right. Any other questions or comments on this before we consider resolution? Councillor Rothman?
Thanks, Todd. Just one more question. In the report, it does mention the considerations that the county has been requested for its consideration. Perhaps the county councillors might be able to add as to whether or not this is on the agenda for county council to actually come on board to have a similar program that could work hand in hand with our program here in North Perth. Thank you.
I'm not aware of any movement at the county on that subject. Councillor Duncan, Deputy Mayor Callum, no, I don't at this point. That doesn't mean that it can't be a matter for discussion and for us to raise with county council and the county of Perth. But at this point, the county has sort of shied away to some degree from creating a housing plan, and that will have to be dealt with in due course if they're going to participate in some way in a program like this. Go ahead.
further, Mayor Todd, and not to be terribly pushy on this, but maybe I should be. Clearly, we know that we have an issue of regarding housing, and we need everyone to work together. And frankly, North Perth, as part of County Council, should continue to be a leader on this issue, as I know Mayor Todd, you've been. I would encourage our county councillors to have the discussion at the county for the county council to move forward on a similar type program that actually is going to help throughout this county. And whether other parts of the county want to do it or not, I think it's important that county council show its support for North Perth in proceeding with this type of program. Thank you.
Noted. I'm sure the discussions will arise. Anyone else with questions or comments on this? All right, I have the resolution as follows. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives a report entitled North Perth Attainable Housing Community Improvement Plan, dated August 12th, 2024, as information. Can I call for a mover? Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Seconded by Councillor Nordum. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Thanks, Ms. McLean. Thank you to our consulting team. And that is carried. Thank you. And again, to Stantec, thank you for working with us so diligently. We appreciate that. All right. Let's move on to item 9.2, reports from the Facilities Department. In item 9.2.1, Council receives a report from staff related to the extended process and due consideration given to the request from the North Perth ATV Club to allow ATVs on a section of overland trail owned and maintained by North Perth. To this end, the staff has done a lot of work that should be recognized, and I do so formally as chair at this hour. And now I'm going to invite our man of the hour, our manager of facilities, Mr. Jeff Newell, to provide more on this. Mr. Newell, you're up.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kiesenberg. I appreciate your comments, and good evening to Council. Council directed staff to solicit feedback from the community through an online survey regarding the ATV use on a portion of the North Perth Trail Network and report back to Council on the findings. Thank you, Andrew. So on March 18th, the delegation came from the ATV Club, and they were requesting access to a portion of the trail. On May 6th, the delegation was made regarding to save the trail, and it was presented to Council as well. Staff at that time presented a report outlining both the pros and the cons of the request. Council gave direction for staff to conduct a survey and gather feedback from the community. The survey took place from the 14th of May to the 31st of May. And then as of this evening, you will see the survey results that are included in the staff report. In addition, we've had our 5 additional presentations this evening as delegations. So we used the online version of Hearsay North Perth. We also had hard copy versions of the survey available at both the municipal office and North Perth libraries. The survey received a total of 768 total responses from the community. So a very well subscribed survey. The online responses represented 95% of the total number of submissions, with 39 hard copies being submitted as well. There was great support from the community initiative. The well thought out and passionate responses to the survey were very compelling to each side of the debate. All responses from the open-ended questions were shared with Council prior to the meeting. So that was shared, and it was a lengthy document, but it showed the compelling side of the stories that came forward. So here's some of the residential data that we had from the survey. 87.5% of the survey respondents were a resident of North Perth. Other municipalities that were represented were Huron East, Perth East, West Perth, Howick, and Mapleton. There was some others, but they were kind of one-offs. The majority of survey respondents lived in Listowel, so that was 57%. 18% would identify as living in a rural area, and Atwood was 15%, and then other smaller hamlets and communities and other were represented at a rate of 11%. 22% of the people that were surveyed indicated that they owned property adjacent to the trail. From an ATV usage standpoint, 59 respondents said they were members of the North Perth and District ATV Club. I feel that the work that they had done to promote the use on the trail has probably helped their membership as far as people being attracted to the club. And when asked if residents own or use an ATV, 57% indicated no and 43% indicated yes. Walking, running, and cycling are the primary uses of the trail. There's other ways that it was enjoyed, and that would be through nature, birding, snowmobiling, and skiing. Most respondents indicate that the trail is used either, they use it either weekly or daily, so trail usage is quite high. The open-ended questions that we shared with council, I'm just going to summarize those. When it comes to in favor, 43% of the respondents are in favor of ATV use on a section of the North Perth Trail System, and 57 are not in favor of ATV use. We did run some numbers this last week as well, and if you look at just residents of North Perth, that number is increased to 60% of the respondents are not in favor, so a jump of about 3% for those ratepayers that live in our community. As far as those that are in favor of ATV use, they indicate that there is economic benefits for our local businesses with tourism and increase in revenues for things like gas stations and restaurants. They say that it would look similar to what you would see during snowmobile season, the benefits that you would see that way. They have indicated that they have safety concerns, and that really relates to that the trails are safer for them to ride on than on public roads. They believe it reduces the risks associated with interacting with larger vehicles and provides a controlled environment for recreational activities. Maintenance and responsibility, they see themselves as responsible entities that can help maintain the trails through volunteer efforts, which they have done with some of their cleanups that they've done for us. They indicate that these efforts will benefit not just them, but all trail users. Those in favor also comment that there should be equal access to public trails similar to other recreational groups like cyclists and snowmobilers. They believe that as taxpayers, they should have the right to use the trails responsibly. Community engagement. There's a perception that ATV use on the trails fosters community engagement and provides families and users with more recreational opportunities locally as opposed to traveling long distances for ATV-related activities. There's a comparison made to snowmobiling. Many proponents point out that ATV use and snowmobiles are allowed on the trails during the winter. ATVs should also be allowed in other seasons. Citing similar impacts to usage and usage patterns. And finally, regulation and respect. Those in favor of the ATV use express willingness to abide by rules and regulations. They would purchase trail permits and cooperate with other trail users to ensure a harmonious relationship. They also indicated that they would have a trail warden system in place to help everyone manage expectations of trail use. So overall, the predominant view of these comments leans towards having ATVs on trails with appropriate regulations and responsibilities of the ATV clubs. This approach aims to balance recreational freedoms with community benefits and safety considerations. Comparisons to other trail networks in other municipalities and neighborhoods are often cited as examples of success. If we were to look now at the not in favor of the ATV trail use, they highlight that damage to trails, they express worries about physical damage, which would include rutting, erosion, and the need for increased maintenance. This can disrupt trail usability for pedestrians, cyclists, and runners. Safety issues are also identified. There's a significant worry about safety, especially for the pedestrians, cyclists, and families with young children. They're seen as being potentially dangerous due to their speed, noise, and difficulty of hearing them approach if you're using earbuds. This poses a problem on narrow trails with blind spots as well. ATVs are perceived as noisy and disruptive to the peaceful environment enjoyed by all trail users. This disturbance not only affects human enjoyment, but also wildlife. There's an environmental impact expressed, concerns about that include noise pollution, air pollution, and disruption to wildlife. There's skepticism about the ability to enforce rules and control ATV use, given the challenges with the existing motorized vehicles that we have on the trail system now. There's doubts raised about the effectiveness of any proposed regulations or permits. Many suggest that ATVs already have access to roads and argue that trails should remain dedicated to non-motorized activities. And from a community impact, residents, including business owners and parents, express concerns about the impact on safety, enjoyment, and quality of life. Overall, the sentiment among the majority of the people responding not in favor, they view the trail as a valuable community resource that should prioritize non-motorized recreational activities and environmental conservation. The potential risks associated with allowing ATVs outweigh perceived benefits for most users who advocate for preserving the trail's current and natural character. So in summary then, we did ask about the 6-month trial as well, and there was some interest in a 6-month trial, but not more than 50%. It's still, people are still adverse to the notion of a 6-month trial. It actually jumped up to 54%, or sorry, dropped down to 54%, but still do not want a 6-month trial on the trails. We also did some surveying or discussions with our staff. And when we talk to our facility staff, which are the people that operate and maintain the trail system, as a collective, they're concerned about safety for all users and the increased cost of trail maintenance and the importance of preserving a passive and well-used recreational amenity. Further discussions were had with Development and Protective Services, and they have certain challenges for municipal bylaw enforcement on trails. They would need specific training, equipment, and a policy penalty system are not currently adequate to manage moving traffic violations, especially in a pedestrian environment, which would require additional funding and resources. From a financial standpoint, there's no direct cost to implementing the survey. However, a significant amount of staff time has been required to manage the undertaking, responding to community feedback. Also, there would be costs associated with developing the trail, the new section of trail, and it's very difficult this time to know what the damage level would be on trails or maintenance requirements would be. So it's difficult to put a price tag associated with what those additional maintenance costs would be. So overall, the sentiment among the majority of users is against allowing ATVs on the trails due to those concerns that I've expressed earlier. They view the trail as a valuable community resource, and it should be kept as a non-motorized recreational amenity in our community. So the potential risks associated with allowing ATVs outweigh the perceived benefits for most users who completed the survey. And they're looking to maintain the peaceful tranquility of the trail. I'd be happy to answer any questions if people have them about the process and where we're at.
Thanks, Mr. Newell. Okay, colleagues, first comments, questions, Councillor Blazek.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Kiesenberg, thank you for your presentation, Mr. Newell. We appreciate the efforts of you and your team in trying to neatly summarize the many, many responses that were received from the online survey. And you did mention this, but I think it's really important for our community members to know that in addition to your summation, counselors also received a more than 200-page document containing every response to the open-ended questions from the online survey. So we were able to thoroughly review the opinions voiced by this community, which is wonderful. In addition to that, counselors have all also received many personal responses from invested community members that were not part of the online survey, whether through email, phone calls, or simply bumping into somebody while you're in and around the community. It's very apparent that this community is invested in the decisions that are made about this trail, and I believe that this council has been able to get a pretty fulsome picture of the community's thoughts and concerns. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank everyone who participated in this discussion and wanted to have their voice heard. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Blazek. Well said. Questions, first comments? Anyone else? Councillor Richardson, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Kiesenberg. Thanks to all the staff who have done this, and I certainly would like to extend kudos to all of the public, the significant public input that we've had on this survey. I would challenge that I would say for any survey that we've physically put out there, that this is probably the most, by far, the most comments that we had received back. And I know initially I had thought that the idea was good to allow the ATVs, but understanding the passion that's involved with the people who enjoy that passive recreation that facilitates on the trail. I have since recanted my initial thoughts for that and feel that at this point in time that I'm in agreement with the motion as it's put forward now. Plus, because I've listened to so many people that have called me, emailed me, the plethora on the survey that has made it apparent that it is not something that is necessarily wanted at this time. And we're here to listen to what the people say and to make the best judgments that we can at that point, Council. So I would just like to, number one, thank everyone for their participation and for staff for digging through this mountain of information and putting it together for the presentation they've put together tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Andreessen is next, and Councillor Anstad.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Kiesenberg. I also want to share my deep appreciation to the public for their great engagement in this topic, whether you're for the ATV usage or not. I think it's so great that you shared your opinions, whether it was on surveys or on petitions or within your community and with us as councillors. That's a very healthy democratic process, and it helps us as council represent you, our community, and I thank you for that engagement. I'd like to also share my appreciation to the ATV Club. They have been very professional in their delivery of their requests and handling their thoughts and ideas. I appreciate what they do in the community, and I want to make sure that they're aware of that. At this time, though, after hearing our community and the information from the survey, I can deeply feel the passion towards the usage of our trail for a more natural purpose. And that's through, cycling, biking, walking, running, those kinds of natural purposes I think are most important and provide an opportunity for the usage that is protective of our wildlife and our natural areas, and also protective of all the users of this trail. And I feel that not permitting ATVs will probably be the safer route for both ATV riders and as well as our public that are using it for natural purposes, because I don't feel our trail is probably in the best condition for the safe usage of ATVs and the public. So I think safety has to be number one in my mind, and I think at this time, of course, I think active participation through the natural use of it is most important. Um, and I just want to make sure that, people understand that we do listen to all demographics, whether it's seniors or youth, families or children. And we want the trail to definitely meet all of your needs. And I think doing that in a natural form without ATVs will definitely meet those needs of all our demographics. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Anstett, you're next.
Thanks, Mark Eisenberg, for you. It's my first time using the mic, everyone, so just bear with me. I'll just be brief. I don't want to kind of repeat what everybody said, but first of all, thanks, Jeff, and your team for all the work that you put into this. I know it was a really long process. We started this initially in the spring, and then we had our engagement throughout the summer, which is nice to see that people are engaged, especially during the summer when people are usually away on vacation and traveling and that sort of thing. The other thing that I'll say is it's been evident through this whole process that this trail is something that North Perth should be proud of, something that a lot of communities, I think, would be envious to have. And I think for me anyway, as someone that does use the trail with my young family, it's something that we need to protect, not only now, but for future generations. And again, looking forward to a discussion from the rest of the council. But just wanted to thank the public for all their engagement on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Anstett. Anyone on this side of the table want to jump in? Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg, and thanks, Jeff, and your team, and thanks to the public. I've been around the council table 20 plus years now, and I have never received so many phone calls, emails, visits. It got to be quite a process to try to go grocery shopping. It's something that used to take 20 minutes, you now plan on an hour plus. And you got to talk about lots of things, but mostly ATVs. So thank you to the public for your care, your compassion. And to the North Perth ATV Club, Sean, you guys have done a great job. You're a great community citizen now. You know, I see you in the spring out cleaning up ditches at the fair, helping out. I hope that continues no matter how the vote goes tonight. But to the presenters tonight, you also gave us a great reasons, and for me, it's reasons that we don't want the ATVs on the trails. You know, Wes, it's the flooding part there, and the safety, and Sherry, it's those seniors that's their time out there, and that's needed time. And yes, Christine, the Saturday morning runners, it's, you know, you get in that zone, you don't want to be, you know, having ATVs interrupting that at time. And Heather, it seems like months ago we spoke about the families that would disappear, that we don't know how many actually use the trails now. So for those myriad of reasons, I'm in favor of the report of not allowing ATVs at this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Johnston. Anyone else wanting to weigh in? Councillor Rothman, go ahead.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and thank you, fellow councillors, for your comments. Thank you, Jeff, and your team for the report, and certainly the public, as was mentioned before. It's amazing how, in this time of connectivity, there's not one channel that we can get that's going to get everyone's attention. This survey that did come out was not known to everyone at first. But thanks to our local media, that was brought forward. Thanks to our members of the public, who talked to their neighbors and talked to others and so on, it became more and more public. But still, we certainly heard, even as late as today, that someone really didn't know that the event was going on in terms of gaining public. And I guess we have ourselves to deal with that. So whether we want to listen to a satellite radio station or not listen to a local radio station, I mean, there is a cost to sort of not being in community. However, we all need to grocery shop, and we can certainly talk with others that are there as well. But I really appreciate the comments that we received, and I do want to outline, as we said before, from the North Perth ATV Club. They're an important service, becoming an important service club. They are, and I want to hopefully get the information from the North Perth ATV Club in terms of the potential that we can work with the club to look at signage, which would increase public safety for their group as well as members of the public that are driving, so that they can share the road as well and make their enjoyment within our community greater than it is currently. The last point I do want to raise is that if we, as a community, certainly do value the North Perth Trail, we need to continually invest. I know, Jeff, you and your team have expressed issues of concern, and perhaps it would be worthwhile for council to consider reinstituting a North Perth Trail Advisory Committee that could look at potential improvements for further enhancement of public safety along that trail. Whether it's going to include municipal addresses at each road intersection, for example, and other signage and so on. But that'll be for another day. Certainly in support of the recommendation not to permit ATV use on the North Perth Trail. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. Anyone else like to speak? Councillor Newton?
Thanks, Mayor Kiesenberg. Through you, I'd like to thank staff, thank our delegations. I have done the trail starting from here to Port Elgin, and I can see why there was interest. I do share a lot of the same concerns as fellow councillors, fellow citizens, many of them being kids on bikes, and as we learn in seniors. I know there's a lot of comparisons between snowmobiles. I know there's a big difference. Snowmobiles, they are on the off season, so there's less potential for pedestrians, bikes, horseback. So, yeah, I agree with the motion tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Newton. Deputy Mayor Callum, you want to weigh in?
Yes, through Mayor Kiesenberg, and thank you again, Jeff, for the report. You know, we've had some conversations in the office on a one-on-one and which way it could go in that. To my colleagues, all great comments. You know, you couldn't have said it any better. I see Sherry on the trail walking. You know, Christine, when she talked about being in the zone. My father-in-law is 88. He walks that trail every day, and it's just nice to get out. And I'm glad he can still do it. But you know, just saying to Councillor Johnson here, kind of the numbers guy. So I had 71 people contact me, whether it was dropping off letters, phoning, email, and only had 3 that were for it. And the one was the fella at the official plan meeting at that round table in Milverton. So again, I appreciate everything, but I can't support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duncan?
Thank you. Like other councillors, I've had a lot of feedback and communication on this issue, probably one of the bigger ones since I've been here on council. And I did suggest a 6-month trial period, and it's good to see in the survey that, you know, people have spoken and people have given us a petition. And I think our job as council is to make a good decision for everyone in the community. And I think it's quite clear what that direction is. And I want to thank each and every person that submitted their comments and phone calls and emails, because when we only get small amounts of feedback, it's much tougher to gauge the level of interest in the community. So I want to thank everyone for the feedback.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. It's funny, I have taken note in the public social media of concerns that have been expressed about how there are background players, those who are moneyed individuals even have been suggested, who have somehow manipulated this issue. And certainly I've been tarred with that brush as well, which is rather amusing to me, because when I came in here tonight, I certainly, and with my wife's raised eyebrow, I'll let you know that, had intended to vote against the resolution. I will say why, and I'll tell you why, and then I'll tell you up front, I've changed my mind. Isn't that a wonderful thing? That in listening to people and the stories and delegations that we've heard tonight, I've certainly changed my mind. But I remain very concerned about the fact that we have snowmobiles running those trails again. And I know that we can make arguments, as Councillor Burnham summarized for us, that it's different, but it's personal in my case because actually my wife has just about been smoked by a snowmobile 3 times since we've lived in North Perth. And so you can see why the temptation for me was to say, okay, let's let the ATVs on, it can't be any worse, especially given that we have ATVs who are already disobeying the environment that we have. And I can tell you, it's strange, and I forgive my analogy here, but as sort of a sense of the father of the community, there have been times when I've walked the trail between a Monument Road and Atwood Core. I'm not an ambitious walker, unlike some of you, and caught ATVs on the trail and given them hallelujah on that occasion, acting in a sense as mayor from that sort of mayoral duty that you're not supposed to be here, get off the trail. So I remain concerned about enforcement, and I think this council should have a discussion further about enforcement with Mr. Newell as we move forward, because we're going to continue to see some bad actors who will come onto the trail, and we don't really want there if that's the decision that council makes tonight. And even more importantly, I remain concerned about snowmobiles. As I said, it's a bit personal. I don't like the notion that my wife, who enjoys a winter walk, has to jump into the snowbank up to her waist to escape 2 snowmobiles running in parallel at extremely high speeds on our trails. And for me, despite a suggestion from one of our delegates, thank you, that there are some differences, I'm not sure there are. I think the principle remains the same. And so I'll vote certainly tonight to say that it's not ATV's time to be on the trail. But I intend to do something about snowmobiles, and I'm serving notice to council that I will bring something forward suggesting that we need to consider the issue of snowmobiles moving forward, because we were creating an inequitable circumstance. And from my take, there are lots of winter enthusiasts who enjoy our trails as well, who snowshoe, who cross-country ski, who take just pleasant walks in the winter, who are being threatened by those devices as well. And frankly, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. I think I've thrown a whole bunch of cliches in there tonight. My apologies to those who are assembled, who are not used to hearing my cliches. My colleagues are used to this. But anyway, I think it's probably time for us to consider the resolution at this point in time. All right, as follows, the Council of the Municipality of North Perth denies the request from North Perth and District ATV Club for permitted ATV trail use on a portion of the North Perth trail system. Moved by Deputy Mayor McCallum, seconded by Councillor Anstead. Thank you. Any further discussion or debate? Councillor Rothman.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. I'm just wondering if we can have a separate matter to discuss other safety improvement measures as well, perhaps related to this issue, but or it's definitely related to this issue, but I think it's probably appropriate to have a separate motion to deal with that as opposed to this one. So with your permission, I'll make that later. Thank you.
Thank you. And it was my thought that I would request a report either tonight or at the next meeting regarding some of that. So perhaps we can collaborate on this, whether tonight or moving forward. All right. Any other discussion or debate? I'm not seeing any. So let's have the vote. Unanimously carried. All right, folks in the gallery, you may express something. I was hoping it was throwing of papers like you see in Parliament and stuff. Okay. Thank you. I think this is an appropriate time for us to take a brief 5-minute health break. So let's recess for that purpose for 5 minutes. Come back at 8. Can I do math here? 8:52, 8:53. Let's call it. And this will allow those who wish to exit at this point to do so comfortably. 4 years of well, it almost feels like we should have had a wine and cheese party with in the aftermath of that. A lot of energy in the council room tonight, certainly from so many who were interested in that item. All right, Mr. Newell gets another crack here on somewhat more straightforward, I think. Results of staff adjudication of a request for proposal are before us in item 9.2.2. Colleagues, the report in your package proposes award of a contract for paving of various parking lots to Armstrong Paving and Materials Group of St. Mary's, Ontario, for an amount up to $127,152.18, excluding HST. Am I the only one who thinks it's odd that there are cents in there? Are there any questions from staff in this one? I won't force you to make a presentation. If there are questions, let's have them. And the clerk should note that Deputy Mayor Cameron exited the chamber in compliance with his declaration earlier in the meeting. Okay, Councilor Blazek, you have a question you make Mr. Newell work.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Todd. Is this the same company that paved the drivers and windows? Do you recall?
No, it's not the same company that did the paving there. It's the same company that we had just recently do the Steve Kerr parking lot near the shed. So we have had some experience with them. And the other bidder that you're talking about was KW Cornerstone. That was the other one.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else with questions or comments before we consider the resolution? All right, as follows. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth awards request for proposal NP-026-24P parking lot paving and upgrades at various locations, including provisional items, to Armstrong Paving and Materials Group Limited, St. Mary's, Ontario, for an amount up to $127,152.18, excluding taxes. Moved by Councillor Blazek. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Johnston. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Oh yes, we need the door at the rear of the chamber opened, please. It was close, I think, to deal with the noise in the hallway, but from an open meeting perspective, it should be open. Thanks, Councillor Duncan. Are we waiting? Oh, we're okay. That's carried. Sorry, I'm omitting what Deputy Mayor Callahan stepped out. Let's bring him back in, if you would, Councillor Andreessen. Thank you. All right. Next, we're going to consider one item of business from the Development and Protective Services Department. In item 9.3.1, Council is invited to support an application for consent to sever a portion of a rear yard of a property in Downstown and consolidate same with an adjacent property. There are a series of conditions attached to the proposed consent application. County of Perth planner Joshua Beach Fashaw is with us tonight to explain the application and justify the request for supporting this application in a submission to the county's Land Division Committee or its designate. I haven't seen you in front of me before, so welcome, Mr. Fashaw.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Council. For those of you who are not yet the privilege to meet, my name is Joshua Falshaw. I'm a relatively new planner with the County of Perth, mostly working in Perth East. This is my first time here tonight, and I'm glad to be here. So moving right along. Zoning bylaw amendment application D10 B21 2024 was submitted by Jim Bender to conduct a lot addition severance to the lands municipally known as 8690 Road 164 in Gallenstown. There we go. Awesome. A lot of addition severances are required to comply with Section 1.6.615 of the Provincial Policy Statement and Section 16.3.2.14 of the Perth County Official Plan. Planning staff are of the opinion that the subject application satisfies all relevant provisions of the Provincial Policy Statement and the Official Plan. All lands affected by the subject application are zoned hamlet and village residential. Both the lands can be retained and the lands can be enlarged and will continue to comply with all the provisions of the hamlets and village residential zone. Staff received comments from the Ministry of Transportation requesting that the owners of 8690 Road 164 confirm that they hold a valid MTO entrance permit, as Road 164 is a provincially regulated highway. Additional comments were received from Hydro One stating they have no concerns regarding the subject application. As per statutory requirement, notice of public application was provided. No public comments were received. The subject application is found to be consistent with all relevant planning policy. As a result, planning staff are supportive of the subject application and recommend that the North Perth Council advise the Land Division Committee that it supports application D10 B21 2024. I would be happy to answer any questions at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Falshaw. Colleagues, questions or first comments on this matter? I'm not seeing any. I am going to read the first part of the resolution, and the conditions are left to our imagination. Actually, they're in the report. So let's try that. As follows, that the Municipality of North Perth advises the Land Division Committee or its delegated authority that the Municipality of North Perth supports application file B21-24 submitted by Jim Bender for the lands described as Part Lot 2 and Part Lot 3, Plan 467, municipally known as 8690 Road 164, subject to the following conditions. There are 3 from North Perth and 5 recommended to the County of Perth. Can I call for Deputy Mayor Callum? Thank you. And Councillor Richardson will be our seconder on this one. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Congratulations on your first appearance before us. All right, let's move next to item 9.4, which from the Operations Department. As item 9.4.1, Council is asked to award tender for structural rehabilitation on line 87 to vendor Engineered Concrete Limited of Kitchener, Ontario. The award amount is $506,052, excluding taxes. Are there any questions for staff about this matter before we consider the resolution? I'm not seeing any, so let's just jump forward. As follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth awards the request for tender NP-027-24T North Perth Structure 087125 Rehabilitation Line 87 to vendor Engineered Concrete Limited of Kitchener, Ontario, in the amount of $506,052, excluding HST. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Blazek, thank you. Councillor Duncan will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that's carried. Thank you. That allows us to move along to item 10 on our agenda. For item 10, councillors, are there any reports that you would like to ask of staff or of our committees? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. And just further to our comments earlier this evening, if we could request staff to provide a report regarding further to the presentation by the North Perth ATV Club regarding possible signage on roads, share the road for ATV use to deal with improved safety for the traveling public. I would appreciate that.
Okay, so we'll consider that we need to give staff direction, so that's a motion moved by Councillor Rothwell. Someone like to second that? Councillor Blazek, thank you. Any discussion or debate on this item? Seeing none, let's have a vote as soon as the clerks are ready. Councillor Duncan records a manual in favor vote. Councillor Johnston, this is something like someone odd glitch tonight. All right. With those votes, that's carried. Thank you. I think I want a little more time to consider my second report on the issue of snowmobiles and other safety concerns about the trails. I won't deal with that tonight. Councillor Rothwell, you have something more?
Thanks, Mayor Todd. Again, separately, but related again to the matter earlier regarding the North Perth Trail. If we could ask staff to report regarding the possibility of the reinstituting a North Perth Trail Advisory Committee to deal with possible improvements for safety, specifically signage along intersection roads. I would appreciate that and for council's consideration.
Okay, so Councillor Rothwell is suggesting that we act to establish a committee related to the Trail Advisory Committee. Is that what we're talking about?
I believe that was the comment that was mentioned earlier, North Perth Trail Advisory Committee.
Okay. So moved by Councillor Rothwell to that end. Is there a second? Councillor Ernst? Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Councillor Norton.
I'm just curious if there was a committee before. Do we know why it was terminated?
CAO, do you have any history on this?
We had a number of recreation committees, and we were all rolled up into just the one, the North Perth Recreation Advisory Committee. So we can certainly look at it, but I would suggest maybe this committee become a working group of the already established Recreation Advisory Committee. But we can certainly bring back a report, investigating and bringing back something along those lines.
Okay, thank you. We're piling up to work on Mr. Newell, it would seem. I notice he's going grayer by the moment, actually. I don't know what to make of that, except for my fate. All right, do we have any further comments or questions? I think this is duly moved and seconded, right? All right, so let's have that vote. Okay, Councillor Ernst records a manual in favor vote. We're missing one. And there we go. We have accumulation of all votes here. That matter is carried. Thank you. All right. Councillor Richardson, wow, we get the reports piling up tonight. Tell me, Jeff, just for fun.
This will be very quick, and this is all I'm thinking through you. This was Mr. Thompson from the ATV Club had made some comments before about road intersections and signs and possibly different times of day that possibly need to be questioned. Would we be able to follow around back with him to get all of that information that he said? Because I had a difficult time hearing him, because I would be interested in seeing that, and that might lead to a discussion a little bit later about possibly looking at the ATV bylaw that we have, of which signage and different intersections. So it doesn't have to be a motion put forward, but just to have that information come back for clarity. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Richardson. I was going to suggest I don't think we need to consider a motion here. I think we can just have staff reach out to Mr. Thompson. He seemed to express willingness to share that information. So,
and we can include that probably in the report with the road signs request.
Makes good sense. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. All right. Anyone else want to propose a report for Mr. Newell? Okay. Let's move to item 11. We've received one item of correspondence beyond that already shared in the consent agenda for council's disposition. A request for a fee waiver for use of the Steve Kerr Memorial Complex in June of 2025 has been received from Tiffany Lamont. The proposed purpose of the event that is to be a gathering of pet and plant enthusiasts to support networking and fundraise for local pet rescues and other purposes. The request is actually not consistent at this point with an approved council policy and council directed donations. And if we need more information about that, we can ask the clerk to help us. So does anyone want to know more about why this doesn't work, why this doesn't fit? Or is everyone comfortable with why it doesn't fit? Okay, everyone's comfortable. We have two resolutions that have been proposed, obviously opposite positions. But right now, as I said, this is not consistent with our council-directed donations policy. So, given just sort of a gentle nod, should we consider declining this request? All right, let's consider then staying consistent with our policy as follows. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth, in accordance with Policy 02-2024, Council-directed donations denies the request from Tiffany Lamont for facility rental fees to be waived or reduced. And I call for a mover. Councillor Johnston, seconded by Councillor Richardson. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's vote. Councillor Mazek.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Todd. I actually really love their idea. I'm such a softie for animals, and I'm just wondering if like we could include, maybe not in the resolution, but just in conversation with them, a gentle encouragement for them to look for community sponsorship. Please, thank you.
I think as we correspond to them, we can add that to our correspondence, certainly. Thank you, Councillor Mazek. All right, we have a motion on the floor. It's duly moved and seconded. Let's have the vote. And that is carried. Thank you. At this point, we turn to consideration of bylaws that have been recommended to us for action. Tonight we have for consideration a total of 4 bylaws. The enabling resolution outlines for each bylaw their number and purpose. Before I read the resolution for passing these bylaws with one stroke, does any councillor wish to extract one or more of them for a more fulsome conversation or an individual or recorded vote? Not seeing that, so as follows, that the following bylaws are hereby passed. 59-2024 being a bylaw to authorize the signing of a lease agreement with the Huron Perth Centre for Children and Youth. Bylaw 60-2024 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement with His Majesty the King and Right of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness. Bylaw 61-2024 being a bylaw to designate a community improvement project area, and Bylaw 62-2024 being a bylaw to adopt an attainable housing community improvement plan for the municipality of North Perth. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Rothwell is up, and Councillor Anderson. We are seconder. Discussion and debate. Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that's carried. Thank you. Let's move on then to item 13 on our agenda. As item 13.1, do any councillors wish to leave to give notice of motion this evening? I am not seeing any hands waving, so let's move forward then to item 14 on our agenda. For item 14, are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? And if we have any connected remotely, which I don't think we do, okay, so we won't invite them to raise their hands because they're not there. All right, Councillor Merrill.
Thanks, Mayor Kiesenberg. Just like to let everyone know that we will be having our first budget for the 2025 season, and that will be on Wednesday the 14th, so in 2 days. See you then.
Looking forward to it as always. All right. Anyone else have announcements? I have 2 lovely staff announcements actually to make that I think council deserves to recognize. We've had 2 of our employees that I've received correspondence about who have been supported by North Perth and provided further educational opportunities. Kelly Broughton, who is a program coordinator with us, has completed her AMCTO Executive Diploma in Municipal Management course and successfully completed the required research paper. So congratulations to Kelly. And Heidi Dorst, who's sitting here in our room as our deputy clerk, also has graduated from the association's diploma in municipal administration And she's been inducted into AMCTO's Academic Honor Roll for her performance in this program. She's completed a total of 4 programs, including Municipal Administration, Municipal Accounting and Finance, Municipal Law, and Employment Law and Human Resources. So I think we owe to both of our employees hearty congratulations on their performance. And I'm in awe with that list, Heidi. That's pretty amazing. All right. Anyone else have announcements to the benefit of our community? All right. We're at agenda item 15. We have no matters to consider in a closed session meeting of council this evening. That means that for item 16, we have nothing to return and report about because we didn't hold a closed session. Council is a mandated good practice acts near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its actions and business of its meeting through what is called the confirmatory bylaw. I'm going to read the resolution to that purpose, noting that Deputy Mayor Callum has exited the chamber per his earlier declaration. Resolution as follows: that Bylaw 64-2024, being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, is hereby passed. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Anstey, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Blazek. Any discussion or debate on this? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Anstey, for bringing Deputy Mayor Callum back in. Councillors, we have completed deliberation and then some, and taken action on the business that has come before us tonight. It is thus appropriate for us to consider a resolution to adjourn as follows. The council meeting adjourns at 9:18 p.m. to meet again for a special meeting of council, the budget meeting, on Wednesday, August 14th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Can I call for a mover? Moved by Councillor Rothwell, seconded by Councillor Richardson. That's not a debatable motion. Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Colleagues, you've heard it. We meet again on Wednesday for budget, and then our next council meeting is August 26th, 2024.